Ladies and gentlemen, we are back. Film Don't Lie is back. It's been, a month and a half since we've been able to grace you with our show, Film Don't Lie NFL show. So glad to be back. It's your boy Chux once again. Pete is still on break, but he will be back with me in a couple weeks as we get going into the offseason. We'll be able to talk some post draft stuff with him once he's back. But you know that I'm not going to do a solo show. It's been years since I've done solo shows on the station, and I don't want to do that again because I don't want you guys listening to me for an hour straight. So I've got guests lined up for you for the next couple weeks while Pete is out. So it's going to be a lot of fun. We're just in time for the NFL draft, so it's going to be a lot of fun. I got some topics that I definitely want to talk about before the draft gets in here. But before I forget, let's talk about our sponsor, Alonzi Travel, specializing in creating the vacation of your dreams at Disney, Universal, or wherever your heart calls you. Let their talented team of travel experts, including myself, create custom vacation for you. I was, if you guys remember, before I went on break, I was out on a work trip with Alonzi, and that went amazing. It was so much fun, and part of the reason why I was on break is because I had so much work to catch up on with my agency. So if you guys are all looking for a trip, Epic Universe comes out, Universal's new park. It comes out next month. It's opening. Tickets are on sale. So let me know if you're trying to plan a trip to Disney or Universal or wherever. I do cruises. I do a bunch of other stuff. So reach out to me if you are interested. But before we get into further draft talk, I want to introduce my guest. I met him on Twitter probably a couple months ago, and he reached out and he said, "Hey, we're both Scouting Academy alumni." And I'm like, "Oh shoot, that's awesome! It's so good to be able to, meet other people that went through that the Scouting Academy." So without further ado, let me get him on. This is Quell from the Philly Blitz. Quell, what's going on, man? Did I pronounce it right? Is it Quell?
Yes, sir. That's correct.
Awesome, awesome. Well, thank you so much for coming on. It is such a pleasure to have you on, man.
Thank you for having me, man. Well, beloved, dub to those who celebrate. It is I, the one and only Mar'Quell Fripp-Owens. Of course, those who follow me in all our endeavors and what we do over at the Philly Blitz and me and doing my draft content. That should sound familiar with you, but that's just my introduction to you people to let you know the type of show that we're having, man. It's going to be a good time. I'm excited to talk ball. I'm excited to talk the process of how all of us got to not just scouting these players, but just the love of the game, man. So let's get to it.
Absolutely, absolutely. It's going to be a great conversation, and I love that over at the Philly Blitz, you're growing, and we'll get into it more there. But I love that the work you put out. I know you sent me some of your scouting reports and stuff like that, and it's great work. So I'd love to dive into that. But first we get into that, let's give some introduction. So I know you're over at the Philly Blitz. What else do you do? Like, anything else besides that? How did you get into this whole football evaluation, and what other things led you into doing this stuff?
Yeah, man. Typically over at the Philly Blitz, I mean, the name kind of speaks for itself. Just like you, we release a lot of Eagles content. And I mean, just trying to release the best authentic conversations that we can, man. Kind of why I'm excited to be here today. The goal there is to just come on, talk ball. As we like to put it, it's like sitting in the barbershop. I mean, of course, you see me and my hair. I have no reason to be in the barbershop, but to talk ball. So that kind of lets you know what exactly we have going on there. But I mean, in general, once this time of year hits, it's I like to call it quail time. It's when I get the ball and get to run and do a lot of fun things, man. I got the Boom or Bust podcast going on. If you haven't had the chance to check it out, make sure you guys tune in. I had the opportunity to have some of the biggest names in the industry on, not just this year, but over the last few seasons, man. So it's a blessing to be able to do that and having that platform. Shout out to the Big Cafe Pierre. But I mean, how did I get here in general? I released a piece over at the Philly Blitz probably about 2 years ago, maybe three
Mm.
at this point. That kind of, I don't want to say deep dives into it because there's a lot more that goes into it. I was kind of having this conversation with myself the other day where, I mean, just growing up, me and my younger brother,
Mm.
we did a lot of playing video games, the Maddens, the 2Ks, and I always was into the NFL draft process because I just love college football. College football,
Okay.
me have a great relationship, and I honestly am one of the guys that say college football and the atmosphere that it brings is probably better than what you get on Sundays. You may not get the same brand of football as you get on Sundays from a game to game basis, but you won't see a lot of the things that you see on Saturdays on Sundays. And with him, he was the basketball guy. I was the football.
Okay.
And he was showing me guys like Zion Williamson and some of these up and coming basketball players. When these guys, LaMelo Ball, and I mean, of course, everybody knows LaMelo Ball, but some of these guys when they were in like seventh grade, and I'm like, man, like you really know, like you really look into this, and I mean, it kind of carved an interest in my heart because I know how I feel about college football, and I like to refer
Mhm.
to the 2007 season. I'm an Ohio State fan, and
Okay.
the one game that sticks out to me specifically is the game against Illinois in 2007. 2007, if you don't pay attention to college football in its own right, was a wonky season. It had probably the most upsets in college football history. You couldn't get into the number 2 spot because if you got the number 2, you were going to lose the next week. It just happens like that. And I don't know why it was, but that was the thing. And Ohio State, they had the opportunity to play against Illinois. And as an Ohio State fan, watching the game, the agony, losing a game that you probably shouldn't have. This is an unranked opponent. What are you doing?
Mhm.
But the football lover in me, I'm sitting there watching, and of course, everybody knows the career Rashad Mendenhall went on to have.
Yeah.
Shout out to him and the Pittsburgh Steelers and his time there. But I'm looking at a guy like Juice Williams at quarterback, like, man, this is fun. This is the future. I've been pushing the narrative of positionless football for years.
Uh,
And just seeing a guy like Juice and how he played quarterback, running around all over the place, making passes when it need to be, it was like, why doesn't the NFL value the things that I value on a Saturday? The production that I see on a Saturday from a day-to-day basis, where it's like, this is a damn good football player.
yeah.
Why don't NFL evaluators feel the same way? So it kind of made me get into the nuances of things, and then it kind of led me to the scouting academy.
Nice, nice. That's awesome. And with me, it was I've always ever since I was younger, I was fascinated with the running back position. And that was always my thing. And I started with A2D Radio back in 2017, and at the same time, that's when I started at the Scouting Academy because I wanted to really deep dive into okay, like I love this position, I love watching it. I want to increase my knowledge of of football in general, but I want to increase my knowledge of how I see the position, and I want to get a close up view, a detailed view of how the NFL scouts look at the position and what goes into it. So that's how I got into not only the scouting academy by enrolling, but then I got into podcasting and doing shows over at ATV Radio. So so now with the scouting academy, right? When did you get into it? When did you enroll?
Oh, I believe it was in 2021.
2021. Okay.
I believe it was the same year. I was on the road that year. I got engaged.
Ooh,
I went into the scouting academy. I was able sitting on a decent amount of money to say I'm gonna get everything I need to get done right now,
nice.
and just the scouting academy process is possibly the greatest thing that has ever happened to me.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Just first of all, I just want to give a huge shout out to Dan Hatman, man. Dan
Man, yeah.
Hatman, you changed my life for lack of a
Yeah.
better term, man. And just some of the things that I was able to not just learn there, but how I was able to kind of figure myself out. Because that was his big thing. Being able to, excuse me for that, being
Yeah.
able to figure yourself out as a
Mm-hmm.
scout, because not everybody has the same eyes, not everybody sees the game the same way,
Yeah.
not everybody has the same thought process. So figure out what you like, how it applies, and most importantly, it's harder, especially being an Eagles base thing over at the Philly Blitz. But I emphasize all the time that during this time of year, we're not here to scout for one team. We're
Yeah,
all 32. So it kind of
exactly.
broadens your horizons and everything.
Yep, 100. Yeah, well, absolutely. Yeah, I agree. Like the going into the scouting academy really, not only did it give me a structure on how I evaluate players, but like it gave me a new sense of how I see the game, right? Um, one of the biggest lessons that I learned was one of the videos of courses that Lewis Riddick has on there, where he was
Yes.
talking about context matters more than numbers. The numbers without context don't mean anything, and that is one of the things I really stand by the most when it comes to talking football. And yeah, Dan Hatman was amazing. Him being able to start that up, and it really helped me a lot. And I how many semesters did you do? Because I did only one. I only did one semester. That's all I could afford. But I don't know if you did two or three or just
No,
one.
same here. I just did one,
Just the one, yeah,
but
yeah,
kind of like what you just outlined. I have it actually written down here. It's actually one of the first things I refer back to when I start my summer scouting, and then when I get back to the frame of things towards the end of the season, where it's like, all right, time to get in the swing of draft things. Where, like you said, the Lewis Riddick context of things, how he put it, basically, is the who, what, when, where, and whys of football.
hmm
Who are you scouting? What are you looking for? When are you scouting? And that's the big thing for me. Situation. Is it raining? What is this team asking this player to do?
yep,
And that's the one where, I mean, you see a lot of things on tape where, well, this guy's only a slot receiver, or this guy only is able to do this and that. And I mean, it's like, well, is this the inside the parameters of the offense that this team wants to do? Is just the player in its own, or is there more to the story that meets the eye? So just
yeah.
things of that nature.
Yeah, no, 100%. Finding that context it's so key, and that's why like when you're looking at a player, and I always say this whenever people present just like face value stats at me, and I'm just like, okay, let's dive deeper. Look at the film. What's going on? Why are these stats the way they are? I was always like, okay, this was an 80-yard reception by a player, right? By a wide receiver. Was it on a deep shot? Was it on a screen pass where he took it the rest of the way? Like, I need to know the reasons why there's certain things like this happen, and that whole approaching it from that whole context was great. One of the other things that structurally when it came to the process that I really learned a lot from, and really helped me was putting grades on traits and saying, hey, this is the grading scale, and this being able to properly say this is an elite, this is a very good or a good or a solid, and so on and so forth trait. It helps you structure and get an idea of, okay, like this is what they do good compared to another person, and it really helps me in terms of like just laying something out where people can really like look at it and be like, okay, have a good and specific view of how a player looks. And that I live I I live by just saying, hey, okay, when I look at the traits, how am I going to grade this? So that's one of the other things that always stuck by me. Um, what positions did you do when you were there at the Scouting Academy?
I went through a little bit of them all because they gave them to 'em. I mean, you had to watch the film, turn into
Mhm.
a scouting report. They grade your scouting report, and they continue
Yeah.
to move on from a situational basis from there. But I did a little bit of them all. Mostly, what I thrived in specifically was the interiors, the offensive, the defensive linemen. I
Nice,
mean,
nice.
those were the first ones they gave to you, and that was kind of when, like I said at the beginning, when I began to figure myself out as Scout Quail. What do you like as Scout Quail and things of that nature? I enjoyed a little bit of the wide receivers and a dabbled a little bit in the
Mhm.
cornerbacks, but for the most part, the offensive and defensive linemen is where I made my money, for lack of better.
That's awesome. Yeah, because I told when Dan was talking to me and he asked, because they ask what positions you prefer, and I said running back. He's like, okay, you can study running back, but you have to study offensive lineman first. Like you can't do it without offensive lineman.
Mm-hmm.
And like to me, offensive lineman is still it's good to know that that's what you love you preferred. Because for me on the opposite end, offensive line is still one of the hardest things for me to evaluate. I know with that was the first position I tackled, and it took me a bit to really get through everyone because I had to, because how they show examples of instructional videos and like they show like they have those like the 30+ minute long videos where they're breaking down film, right? And so like I watched those to kind of get a grasp of, okay, like what am I looking for exactly? Because I've never scouted an offensive lineman. So I was like, okay, what am I looking for? What are these traits that I should be aware of? So that was a huge learning experience for me. And so I did offensive lineman, running back, and then wide receiver and tight end. So I did those on offense. I didn't have time to dabble into the defensive side. So I always, when I do my stuff, I always do lean offense because I'm not as honed in to the defensive side, and I'm still learning on learning how to scout that in terms of X's and O's as well. So I lean more toward the offenses because that's what I've learned more at Scouting Academy and have more of an eye for. But that's awesome that you're focused on the trenches most, because I find that hardest for me. Obviously besides quarterback, but yeah, I mean, anything else from Scouting Academy that you took that always like, you wanted to point out and always stuck with you?
Yes, I'm glad you asked that. One thing specifically. I mean, not one thing that I took, but one thing specifically that if I had to tell anyone, I actually told this to one of my co-hosts, Parth, when we got into the process of podcasting together. And we started off just talking ball. We had a genuine conversation first, then it grew from that to just talking ball. We was just creating the chemistry. So once we got on, everything moved smooth sailing. And as we got through the process, one of the things that he asked me midway through was, how did I get to this point to be able to watch football like this? Because I mean, it's easy to sit there and say that you watch the film and things of that nature, but you have to understand exactly what you watch and when you watch the film, and that's the big thing.
Yep.
And I always refer people, but mostly him, back to an article they made you read early on in the process from Matt Waldman, "Losing Your Football Innocence."
Love Matt. Oh yeah, I did a show with Matt. But Matt's stuff is one of my favorites. He's one of my favorite evaluators out there. So yeah,
that article right there is kind of the epitome. I try to get what not try. My wife is actually enthusiastic in learning football. She's like a sponge.
nice.
It makes me happy being able during football season to share those moments with her, talk like legit talk ball. Like, why did this happen? Well,
Yeah.
because basically things like that. But being able to watch, I tell her all the time, I miss being able to watch football the way you watch football, because all you doing is watching the ball get snapped, ball get thrown, ball like wherever the football is
Yep.
at, that's where your eyes go. And a guy like me, I'm sitting there like, well, what fronts are they in? How are they trying to attack the quarterback? Oh, look, that left tackle just got beat. Oh, look at the top of
Yep.
the screen. Great. Like I can't watch football in a sane way, for lack of a better term. And
Yeah.
I don't want to say it drives me crazy, because like I said, I love the game, but I
Yeah.
do miss the innocence, for lack of a better term. But I
Yeah.
tell people all
I
the time,
totally hear you. Yeah.
if you want to get
Yeah.
into the nuances of this, start with that article, because it lets you know exactly what you're getting into. And if you finish that article and still feel the same way that you want to go on and learn, let's roll.
Yeah, it's so funny you say that because I still remember back in early days of watching football, pre Scouting Academy. What is the average fan watch? You said they watch the ball, right? The ball is hiked. They're watching the quarterback, or have the ball, or the running back if it's handed off, right? And that's all they're watching. Now, like pre snap, what you're saying is like look at the formations. And after the snap, I'm not watching the ball. I'm watching the line. I'm saying, okay, like, is there penetration? Who's doing their job? Or are they blitzing? Like, that's what
Mm-hmm.
I'm looking out for. Like, so I'm constantly watching the line, and then it's so annoying to me because I hate something that I preach on is I hate the broadcast angle because you can't see the whole field. Like, I love prime vision because that camera is zoomed out and you can see everything. And I remember I forget which, I think it was Monday Night Football, I think it was, where they experimented with the sky camera where it was a vertical camera and then you could see everything. So I loved that because you know the film guy in me needs to see the whole field. I need to see what are the wide receivers doing, what's the coverage like, what are the DBs doing. Like, so I hate the broadcast camera for the same reasons that you're saying, because I can't see the whole field. I can only see like half of what's going on. So it's so funny you mentioned that, but yeah, absolutely. So what is so I know they teach at the Scouting Academy. Obviously, they teach the process and how it's structured from their their point of view, and um, you know this is how scouts at NFL do things, right? Um, I would imagine with you and with me, ever since then, I've altered some things for my own liking. So,
Mm-hmm.
without getting, I guess, because we could get into very, very, very detailed, you know, process and talk about this for hours, but a general, so the general idea, what is your evaluation process when you're watching the film? Like, what do you like, even though, like, do you listen to music, like, do you tackle position by position, or do you go by certain players? Like, so what is your what is a rough and general view of what your process looks like?
So no, actually, I'm glad you said that because I actually enjoy listening to people identify with their or seeing people when I watch them in the process of doing it, identify with their scouting comfortability, for lack of a better term, is how do you get in that mode to do what you want to do?
Mm-hmm.
Like some people, they're able to listen to music, things of that nature. I can't do it. My head has too many things going on at one time where if I hear something going on in the background, it's kind of distracting to me. So
Mm-hmm.
I like kind of like a quiet area. Quiet area. I'd sit there. I might pour me a glass or something. So just to relax or so. Because I mean, like Lewis Reddick said, this isn't a short process. You don't know how long you're going to be watching this specific. There's some players you can watch them for 2 games and you're like, yeah, I got the
Yep.
idea of
Yeah.
you.
Yeah.
And then
Yeah.
there's some players you've been sitting there for 2 hours, like, I just don't understand you, brother. What is
Yep.
going
Yep.
on?
Oh my
So,
god, yeah. This running back class, by the way, that's oh my god, so many people, and some of them, it took me like several games. Others, I was like you said, after 2 games, I'm like, yeah, I know who you are. Like, yeah,
yeah.
100%.
So for me, just in general, the process starts with just trying to find a relaxing area where I can kind of hone in on what I want to watch. Now, that's the key words. That's why I was trying kind of careful choosing my words there because like I said before, all prospects aren't the same. I wish you can just go into watching offensive linemen or go into watching cornerbacks or receivers or things of that nature. I'm gonna watch Tater McMillan right now and then Kyle Williams right after that. I wish you can go into the process and say, I'm just watching wide receivers, but you kind of have to understand what you watching, how this player is utilized, where they're being utilized, what's the purpose of them being utilized in this area, things of that nature. So you kind of gotta I go into each player with a different process
Hmm.
of like a player that kind of stands out to me when I have a conversation like this is Christian Gonzalez. Like I had to understand, was Christian Gonzalez always this purely athletic player? That how I viewed him, how I wrote him down when I had the chance to talk about him was I wish he had more nuance, and that's something that could be taught as you continue to have a long elongated career. But for the most part, he played the position with his athleticism. He played the position, just to simplify for folks. He played a position like LeBron James. He he's bigger and better than everybody. He's more athletic than everybody, and it shows on tape when he does some of the things at the cornerback position. He plays the cornerback position like he's a great athlete, takes a bunch of risks that he probably wouldn't take if he wasn't. And then the question for me kind of molding into the whole, well, so once you in year 8, year 10, and the athleticism begins to fade and you kind of have to become like, let's say, and it's easy to say this now in hindsight because he's the reigning defensive player of the year, but I also think back to the years of watching JC Horn and Patrick Surtain and what kind of set them apart in general. And it was like, well, how I said it, JC plays the position the way it should be played. He got the attitude, he holds himself to the stand, he gonna get into your head, he gonna bug you. If that's what you want to see out of cornerbacks, because that's what we grew up watching. Now, when you really love football and you want to watch the tape and see who's doing things right, that's Patrick Surtain for you. Just a technician, does all the things the right way. And that's one of the kind of the players where you like, he's going to succeed on day one, but he's going to be even better on year 8, year 10, like I'm talking about in Christian Gonzalez, because his game is predicated on just the natural things of the position, the things that won't fade. So how does that translate for you? Things of that. So having these kind of conversations are kind of what goes through my head when I'm watching these players. It was fun watching Abdul Carter. I'm actually going to watch a little bit more of him once we get off, just finalizing things for my top 100. And the big thing was, well, you got utilized literally mostly as an off-ball linebacker in your first 2 years. And I mean, you kind of had to the quarterback a little bit, but that wasn't really your task. You had whole hell of a lot more coverage responsibilities. And then you look at him this year and they said, we're going to make you a pass rusher, a pure pass rusher. And how does your skill set translate to that? How are they able to get the most out of you? Things of that nature. So, I mean, I like to think, for me, at least in my mind, it's fun once I get into the swing of things. Just it's kind of like the conversation we having now, just talking ball, where I'm like, man, hell, he did this, but then in this game it worked like that. So let's see how,
Yeah. Oh yeah. It's so funny how I love hearing that from you because it does differ from how my process is. So like where you like a quiet, you don't like noise and stuff like that. I've always been someone who needs music. I work best when like music is like it calms me when I hear like music that like I can be in tune to. And I guess partly because I have a dancing background, so like I've always had that. I've like 10 plus years in dancing, so like I guess it's that part of me where I've always just music like is in tune, like it puts my body in tune. So when I'm doing work, even if it's like like work, I love having music in the background. So like it calms me. I don't like blast it. I put it at like a lower tone, but it helps me get into like a good headspace, right? So I do that, and then I do go because my niche is running back, so I do focus more on that position. So I go and I when I try to pick out games, that's another thing is like and I think we learned this at Scouting Academy, right? So if there are games film that I have, and I usually try to watch at least 3. Like you said, after 2, sometimes for some people you have an idea after 2, but the goal is to at least have 3, right? But if like the provider I have has like more than 3 games, and I'm trying to pick out which 3 games I'm going to watch, I never go and just pick the best performances. That's so because you're always going to see them at their best, right? Just kind of like in the way that like you shouldn't watch highlights because you're only watching the good, right? I need to have at least 1 game in there where I am seeing a bad performance, where statistically, it wasn't a great performance or a great game by them. That way I can be like, okay, what is what what were the factors that determined a lower output and statistical output in this? Was it bad blocking? Was it just a hard, a tougher opponent? Was it, were they hurt? Stuff like that. So it's I always try to have a good variance of games that I watch. That way it helps me balance stuff out. You know what I'm saying?
Hmm.
Yeah.
So it makes me, and I mean, of course, you the host of this podcast. I don't mean to be the one asking questions, but
No,
it
no,
makes
it's
me
fine.
wonder how exactly do you get to that process? And I mean, of course, everyone's different. I mean, I have my process itself where how do you find the bad game, for lack of a better term? The good games are easy to find. I'm sure once we even though we try to stay away from highlights, I'm sure once you look on Twitter or things of that nature where you see the clips of these players,
Yeah.
these specific games where you like, yeah, that's probably one of his best games. All the games that pop up, things of that nature. So, how exactly do you get to or identify the quote unquote bad game? Which what goes into how you select that?
So like it's statistically obviously is one thing, but statistics, I look at the box score and say, okay, like do they have like a tougher game? Because usually so for college, right? Because for during the NFL season, I have we use NFL Plus and we have thank God that's there. They give us the film of all the NFL games, but for college it's a little bit harder to get actual all 22 film of college prospects. Luckily, I did find someone that does provide game film of like most prospects. I don't know if you use them or heard of them, but Taddy's Cut Ups, they're
Mm-hmm.
great because like you sign up with the Patreon and it's really not expensive at all, and you have access to his library of all 22 films. So the thing is, when you look at the prospects, he has some prospects he has a lot of games for, other prospects he doesn't. Like some prospects that he'll only have like maybe two, and like my selection is limited. And in those cases, like I'll watch all 22 of that, but then if I need more, I'll go to YouTube, and you know how they have the cut ups on YouTube, with like okay, like this is all their snaps and or all their targets from this year, and so I'll pick those out so that I have, even though it's not all 22, I still have cut ups of all their other snaps and whatnot, other reps that I can watch, and it's not just highlights. But pretty much like I try to pick out, hey, like you know like I said, if this running back could have gone for 150 yards and 20 carries on this game, so okay, cool, this was a great game for them. I'll definitely hit that. But if I see one of them where it's just like 25 or 30 carries for 70 yards, all right, I'm picking this because I'm very very curious as to okay, why was this a lower output? So sometimes because of there's not much selection for me that decides which games I watch. But when I do have more selection provided to me in terms of film files that I can get, that's when I go and pick like okay, like which ones do I actually want to watch and which would be good. And then obviously if it's someone like for me, you're an Ohio State fan. Um, Two of the running backs that I had to watch more games of this year were Trevion Henderson and Quinshon Judkins because how they split time, so I'm like, I need more reps. I watched 3 games of each, and I was just like, I need to see more. So like I watched literally 6 games of them of each of them, so I can get a better idea of who each of them are. So it's really like sometimes I need to be more comprehensive and watch as much as possible. Make sense?
No, I mean, definitely, man. That's what I like to think conversations like we're having right now are meant for. Everybody has their own process, and you should
Mhm.
respect your process because it got you where you are at this point. It got you this far, and it's going to keep getting you where you want to go. At the same time, I mean, like I like to say, a broken clock can be right twice a day. So you never know where you'll learn information from. So sometimes having conversations like this, being able to just gather information, pick somebody's mind. That's what I like to tell my guests when I have them on that boomer bus. I'm just here to pick your mind. I mean, I'll get some of my thoughts on prospects out, especially if we're having a real nuanced conversation. But for the
Mm,
most part, I just want to know what you feel about some of these guys, and I want to be able to see, well, am I seeing the game correctly? And I mean, of course, like I said, you got to respect your craft. So sometimes
yeah.
there are times where you got to stand your ground. Like, I don't think that this skill set is as good. And there's sometimes
Yeah.
where you'll listen to them like, okay, maybe I should go back and watch a little bit more of this player, things of that nature. So it differentiates from time to time. If I must say, silent shout out, I guess. Hopefully this gets you some money in some way, shape, or form. But shout out to Dynasty Nerds, man. Shout out to the Nerd Herds. If you could, it's only 19.99 annually, just to kind of buy in. They have really great film for in terms of just collegiate teams in
Yeah.
general. So if you want to watch specific players, you don't have to go very far. But I kind of in the same breath with you. I dibble and dabble a little bit of everywhere just to get my film a little bit there. Dynasty Nerds getting able to
Yeah.
get an all 22. I have a guy who was nice, kind enough to send me some of his collegiate all 22. I dibble and dabble on the YouTube with some of the great. There are some great people out there that have some great cut ups that allow
Oh
you to
yeah.
watch the game from
Oh yeah.
not a broadcast metric, and
Mm-hmm.
it's cool to see. But
Yeah.
even then, I try to what my goal was, and this was kind of the goal, like the conversation we had up top, the goal of the Philly Blitz as a whole. And what my goal is, or was, and still is, going into this kind of setting was to find an ability to match the film with the analytics, for lack of a better term. I'm not like a
Yeah.
super analytics guy,
Yeah.
but I'd lie to you if I told you analytics didn't mean anything to me. I'm the guy
No.
in the conversations that say
100%.
the analytics stats. So, but things of that nature. So I dibble and dabble with a little bit of what PFF has to offer just to get an
Uh,
idea of what before, not necessarily before, but before I watch the player, for lack of a better term, where if you had the chance to see one of my scouting reports, you'll see that I have like a little bit of their background, then what their combine results were if they tested it. And then right under that is the background, like the player background,
yes.
childhood, things of that nature, and how they were used, alignment, statistics, things of that nature.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of that comes from PFF. And I use those just once I get those numbers in, just seeing their alignments, where they would kind of like the Abdul Carter conversation that we
Yeah.
had.
Yeah.
It kind of made me, I don't want to say it tempers my expectations, but it kind of gives me an opportunity to either A, see what I'm looking for in 2024 or in said year that we watching these players. But if I need to go back and watch prior years to see, like a great example of this is Nick Scorton and how he was
Mm-hmm.
utilized at Texas A&M. And there's the conversation about his weight and things of that nature, what he played at, what he came in at the combine, and things of that nature. Because I really wasn't high on Nick to start the process, but once
Okay.
I continued to watch things of that nature, but once I got the numbers in, it was like, okay, so here's a transfer. Where was he at before this? Purdue. How did Purdue use him? And then you went back and you watched the tape, and kind of like I said about Christian Gonzalez, where I watched him at Oregon, yeah, but I had to go back to him at Colorado to understand who Christian Gonzalez
Yeah.
was. It's this. So just being able to, it kind of, like I said, I don't want to use the term temper my expectations, but it gives me a kind of a guideline to see where I should watch this player at, how they were utilized, what exactly should I be looking for in all of these terms.
Yeah, I love that, and I love that you mentioned that because I'm in the same boat of you in terms of analytics. Like, I am not an analytics guy. I'm always going to be film first. So it's always tough for me um to really get into that avenue, and like as hard as as to lean that way as much as some people do. But at the same time, I don't there is a place in football for analytics. There absolutely is, and they can be very helpful if you know the meaning of what they're saying, right? Because like Shane Half, I've done shows, I've been on their shows, and he's been on mine a couple of times, and he's really helped me understand analytics a lot more, right? And really say, okay, like this is what these analytical categories mean, and it helps you. Like, it's not, again, I'm never going to be an analytics purist or truther, but I'm always going to say, hey, like, they do help. They absolutely do help. And things like rushing yards over expectation, I put more weight on that than I do just plain rushing yards, right? Because it's going to, these analytics, what they do is they help put a little bit more context and detail than just compared to just face value stats, the basic stats you see in the box score. And I can appreciate that. And they're never going to say everything, but that's where as a film guy, I can still respect where analytics are coming from. And so 100% I agree with you with that. And yeah, I was looking at your scouting report, one of your scouting reports, and your work. You do such a great job including so much information. I was looking at the Luther Burden one, and it's I love your prospect overview at the end where you cite and explain in detail how this player was using everything. You provide even the prospect in the background and all that. So I love your scouting reports, and you continue to do an awesome job with them. And so when you make them, like what is how did you come to the conclusion of structuring it that way? And, like, from obviously the scouting academy background that both of us have, but what do you like also about when you're making these scouting reports?
So for me, it kind of came down to basically I want the people to be as informed as I am. And sometimes I feel kind of bad because I know the version that I release to the public is pretty elongated. I try to be detailed. But what I have for my personal end is even longer than that.
Yeah.
And it kind of goes into one of the things I learned from the Scouting Academy. I mean, it keeps coming up, rightfully so, where scouting for all 32 teams is an interesting thing.
Yeah.
And I don't want to say I get pushback. There are people that are intrigued to hear when I say this other part of the process. But when I watch players, I typically don't like to include positives or negatives. Mostly because what I learned from Dan Hatman is when you get into these rooms, these teams don't give a damn, excuse my language, but these teams don't care if you aren't good at something. How can we utilize this player? What is he good at? Things of that nature. So for me, and especially once we get to this point in time of year, I'm big on saying I don't talk bad about players. I don't insult players. I don't, like, whatever I say about a prospect, it's probably just me giving constructive criticism. I'm
Mm-hmm.
not here to
Yeah.
bash you or internet talk you or things of that nature. So, I mean, if I said you aren't really good at something, it's probably just because that's what the tape said.
Yeah. Yeah.
But just in the gist of things there, I try to kind of just get an idea. How I listed on my end, on my personal end, is thoughts. Just what do I think about this player? He's good at this. He's good in this area, but he could be better if this process happens, things of that nature. Just kind of try to give an overall view. And that part right there kind of helps me in the gist of once I create the overview of the prospect, because everything I need is kind of right there. I'm not trying to separate the positive from the negatives and things of that nature. It just kind of talks about how all of these things correlate together in their one
Yeah.
form.
Yeah. 100. Yeah. Absolutely. I remember that saying too. It always stuck with me too. Is teams don't care about what a prospect can't do; they care about what they can do. And I loved that because I had to remind myself from time to time too. Because when I'm evaluating, I'm like, okay, like when every year I tweak my reports and my layout of how I provide my own scouting reports. I tweak it to make it better each year, and I went from, because when we learn at the scouting academy, they say the cans and the can'ts, or the can section and then the cannot section, right? So I used to use that, but then I'm like, I don't want to. So like you said, I don't want to name strengths and weaknesses, or that kind of stuff. I want to give, to me, and it's similar to what you explained. It's in your version. It's your thoughts, right? To me, it's the meat and potatoes. The most important part of my scouting report or my evaluation is the projection summary, because that's where I say, how does this prospect translate to the NFL? What are the ways? What's their role? What are the ways they how do they succeed in that role, and how can they be used? What are, and this is why this is how I like to phrase it, as opposed to weaknesses. I say, what are some areas of concern? Because me phrasing it that way shows, okay, like maybe they're not as strong in this area, but they can improve, and it's an area of concern because it's something they can work on and develop. So I love that. I love using that. When I was able to tweak it and word it that way, I was like, I like that better. I like saying an area of concern a lot better than I like saying a weakness, right? So I'm with you. I don't like talking bad about prospects. We see that a lot online, a lot with Twitter. Like, we see, people are always like, "Oh, I hate this player," or like, "This player sucks," and stuff like that. I try to separate myself from that, because even if I have a lower grade on a prospect, I will always be open and always try my best to spot out a path to success for them. Say like, okay, how can this person be maximized so that they can be sort of to succeed? So I'm with you. I think we share a lot of the same mindsets in terms of this isn't about who's good or bad necessarily as much as it's how can these players translate over to the NFL to a certain team and succeed, at that level.
And that statement right there is really the most important part of not just this conversation, but the NFL draft as a whole. Because there are going to be a bunch of really good football players that land in places that either don't utilize them correctly, or it just don't work out for one shape or another. And there are going to be players who, what I like to refer to, and I mean, like I said, I don't trash talk players. This isn't me calling Bo Nix bad by any metric of the court. But there are going to be players like Bo Nix where you like, well, I didn't really, I projected something similar, but I didn't really project this level of success. But it's great to see him succeed, man. I tell people all the time, I want players to prove me wrong. Even if I wrote the greatest scouting report ever about you, I want you to be even better than that scouting report that I wrote.
Absolutely.
That's just the process of this. I want everybody to succeed, and it's not really realistic, but that's kind of where we at here, where I want to see you win, but how can you win? How can we get you to this point? Which brings me back to the whole, I'm not really into the strengths and weaknesses of you. Where are you successful at? Hell, one of my favorite examples of these is DK Metcalf, and hopefully it extends to his time in Pittsburgh. But I was ecstatic at how Seattle utilized DK Metcalf. We all talk so much trash about DK Metcalf and his lack of lateral agility and things of that nature, especially after the 3-cone. And then he goes to the NFL and succeeds at a high level because the team that selects him used him the exact same way he was used in college, by not asking him to run a whole bunch of different levels of a route tree. You run slants, you run posts, you run goals. That's what you do. And we're going to keep using you in that metric. And there are a bunch of players who have great NFL careers by that metric alone. You are good at something, and we're going to keep using you at that.
Yeah, 100%. It's I always want to see, and then for me, like, I don't know if you read. So I met with Matt Waldman. I purchase his draft guide, the RSP, every year because I think it's fascinating. It's a great piece of work, and his one section that he always includes in it is it says why rankings suck, right? And he goes into a long explanation of, like, and in essence, I'm going to say the whole thing, but like, in essence, rankings, they're pointless, right? They're absolutely pointless. They're irrelevant in the long scheme of things because of the reasons that we said. Like, it's all about how a certain team is going to use them, and what a player might be better for one team, but then not as good for another, right? It's all about a lot of it is about how they're used. So, like, one of the hardest parts of this whole draft season and the whole evaluation process for me is, because I love, just like you, I love studying and evaluating players, but I hate grading them and I hate ranking them, because, like, I'll have like I'll be looking at a prospect, right? I'll be almost finishing up their evaluation, and I'll be like, okay, like, are they a third round grade or are they a late second round grade for me? And I spend so much time sometimes bickering with myself when in reality, like, it really doesn't matter if I do, because with these grades that I give them, I accept the fact that, like, they're not always going to stick. It's irrelevant. Like, I hate how sometimes grades, right? They will make it seem like it's a hard line projection. Like,
Mm-hmm.
okay, this person is a third round grade up for me, so this is exactly how they're going to end up. But it's never that simple. It's like a destination, where they go to, how they're used, how they're coached, how they're developed after the draft plays a huge part. And there are things that they improve on that we can't really predict all the time. And so, I like I
Yes.
said earlier, the projection summary to me is so much more important than a grade or a ranking.
So
You know,
it makes me want to ask, because this is one thing that I pride myself on. I take from the Scouting Academy. And I mean, like you said, projection is important. It is very important because there are things about the conversation that we don't know necessarily. Players not good at doing X now, but in 4 years he's elite at doing X. It's just a learned process. And what one thing Pierre says all the time that I respect, that I love the term that he used. I kind of adopted it in myself, where it's development isn't a linear trait.
100%. Yeah.
It's something that is up, it's down, it's
Hmm.
out of this world, it's slow. Like, things happen. So you kind of have to let things happen in their own way, shape, or form, where it gets hard to rank players, which is why I kind of adopt the metric of tape over traits.
Hmm.
And I say all the time, I respect the people that do the whole traits over tape thing and the whole projection, because that's how you keep a job in the NFL, but that's also how you lose a job.
Hmm.
Somebody like me, I mean, they probably, I want to say I'll be Jeff Fisher. I probably have a couple of 8 and 8 years in there, but my team will never be bad, and they'll be competitive because I'm just
Hmm.
going to draft good football players. It's reasons like this why Chris Olave was my wide receiver one in the year he came out.
Hmm.
Because I mean, you sit there and you watch a bunch of the other guys that were around him and things of that nature. It was the CD Lamb draft, right? Where I mean, CD Lamb, he has a higher upside than Chris Olave. Just like even this year, it's a very similar situation for me. And Emeka Ibuka is my wide receiver too, because I just know, just like Chris Olave, you could place him in almost any scheme, and this player probably played 10 years, barring any health issues or things of that nature. He's going to play for a long time because the things that he's good at, like I said earlier, they don't fade. He's a player that he's good at the things that matter at football. Now, if you're a risk taker, if you're a gambler or things of that nature, that's why players like Matthew Golden exist, because Matthew Golden and his upside is out of this world. He could be
Yeah.
really freaking good, really freaking good. I like to say, or how I wrote it down, is he doesn't necessarily play the game at his natural speed, the
Yeah.
4.29 that he ran at the combine, but it could also be a level of, like we explained before, he wasn't asked to play the game like that. That
Hmm.
wasn't his role. He wasn't a deep threat. He played next to Isaiah Bond, who was just as fast as him, even if the numbers don't say it. Like,
Yeah.
they had two speed demons over there. So how he
Yeah.
was utilized, kind of, we don't know. So you kind of got to watch to understand these conversations. So if you want to talk about upside, if you want to take the player with the higher upside, I'd never blame you, because, like I said, that's how you win Super Bowls. But that's also how you get fired, because
Yep.
if you sit
Yeah.
there, one of my favorite examples of this is at the quarterback position. I just said on one of my recent Boomer Bust episodes, is if you sat there and you told me that either Shador Sanders or Cam Ward, only one of them is going to play 10 years in the league, I promise you it's going to be Shador Sanders. If
Sure.
you sat there and you told me only one of them won a Super Bowl, I probably put my first bet on Cam Ward, because that's just the upside that he possesses. So
Yeah.
it's a
Yeah.
different conversation to be had, and it's a different thing, different strokes for different folks type of thing.
Oh,
So
like,
it's
yeah.
all about what you really want or what you value in the scouting process. And just for me specifically, production matters. And I also understand like the Harold Fanning conversation where you could be super productive, but how does that translate to the next level? Like, of course, that's why the tape matters. But for the most part, I think you should start with just drafting good football players, if you ask me.
Yeah, I mean, I it's so funny. A lot of the stuff that you're preaching is stuff that I stick by too, and a lot of people who watch and watch our shows here on ATG Radio, they've heard me say a bunch of times. So I'm 100% with you, and it's awesome to hear. We might have different processes, but our mindset and how we see and appreciate things are so similar. So I love that. I love hearing that. We have a little bit left in this show, so definitely let's talk a little bit of the draft, of this draft, because I know a lot of the people that are tuning in, they're going to be listening to the show. They want to hear this stuff because the draft is next week, or 2 weeks, right? Yeah, next week. Next week. God, geez, coming by quick. But yeah, we talked about at the top of the show and in the title, our guys or my guys, right? So everyone has a list of favorite prospects, guys that they just love to watch. One reason or another. So I'll give you how many, because I have again, my niche is running back. So I'm so far I'm just gonna name mostly running backs, but I can name 5 guys so far. I don't know how many you have.
At running back specifically,
or no, it can be any position. I'm talking
any
about
position. Honestly, I could talk all night long. My guys give me a little bit of hell because I'm a bit of a junkie when it comes to this part.
That's awesome.
I just love ball, man.
Yep. So let's do 3. So let's each do 3. So I'll let you start. So name your first my guy.
So if you guys want to get a detailed assumption of the Quell, my guys, the all Fripp-Owens team, as I like to put it, I just released this episode. I had the blessing of having the great brother Anthony DeBona on. So make sure you guys check that out. And that kind of we went through basically position by position from quarterback all the way down to safety. So you'll get a great length of players. Now, if I had to go from just a top 3, quote unquote, my guys in this class, it'll probably start with A, Travion Henderson, B, Armand Membu, and C, Savon Revel.
Savon who? Sorry.
Savon Revel.
Oh, Revel. Okay. All right. Travion Henderson. It doesn't surprise me. So I want to ask you, because it's because with the tandem, I'm assuming you like Henderson. Do you like Henderson a little bit more than Judkins?
See, it's a funny conversation, and it kind of I just love how y'all see, like I said at the top of the podcast, it's barbershop talk, man. Yep. Any conversation that we'll be involved in, everything will always correlate to each other at some point in time or another. And this conversation right here is just the assumption of everything that we've talked about all day, where, I mean, it's kind of about what you've been asked to do. It's kind of about how deep are you willing to go into the process of watching this player. And I mean, I'm just blessed to be an Ohio State fan. So I've watched Henderson. I'm sorry. I've watched Henderson for years at this point. Yeah. I even got personal film or had the opportunity to go watch Ohio State versus Maryland a couple years ago in person. And I kind of got a very good idea of who Travion Henderson is, type of thing. So, and for me, if you ask me, the Ohio State fan, which one I prefer, I mean, Quinshon Judkins, because we stole him from SEC teams. He's a demon between the tackles, things of that nature. He's just really freaking good. I don't know how many running backs in the nation. There are probably a couple, probably 3 I can name just off the scoop that are probably better than him, but there aren't many that were better than him, for lack of a better term. But if you talk about talent evaluating, how things translate to the next level, all things of that being in the thought process of it, for me, Travion Henderson ended up being running back 2. And it was a difficult conversation between him and Omari and Hampton, and how it really came down to is I just think that how I classify Travion is a 5 tool player. There isn't anything like you have really no reason to take him off the field as a football team. He excels as a pass catcher. He excels in pass protection. He's good not only between the tackles. I mean, he's not as good as Juckins between the tackles, but he can run between the tackles. There was a point in time during the playoffs where I was like, just let Henderson run between the tackles and let Juckins run the outside because this is what's working. I guess Flip was been working all year type of thing. But he showcased an ability to run between the tackles. He clearly showcased an ability to be a zone runner because that was what Ohio State excelled at leading up to this year before hiring Chip Kelly. Like there's a lot of things to his game where, like I said about a couple of players this year, he's one of those guys where I kind of know that he's going to play 10 years in the league because you're going to always have a reason to keep him on a team. He's either going to be your best pass protector as a running back. He's either going to be your best pass catcher as a running back, or he just might be your best running back. So it ultimately, when it came down to those things for me, and this isn't to say anything about Hampton and his ability to pass protect because he's solid there. He's just no Travion Henderson. When I was grading Travion Henderson in terms of pass protection, it became, and I have certain, I don't know if you do this, but when I have that chance to evaluate certain players, if I feel a certain way about you, you kind of reach legendary status. As I evaluate other players, I kind of compare them to that. Like that's how I feel about you, type of thing. And for me, I don't want to say Kyron Williams is probably one of the best running backs I've had the opportunity to scout. But in terms of pass protection, I don't think I've ever scouted a running back better than Kyron Williams in pass protection. And it was very close in terms of him and Travion Henderson and the work they do at Pass Pro. So that goes to show you how I feel about him right there.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Yeah. It's good. It's good to hear. So for me, the three guys I'll say for mine, and again, I'll mention two running backs, and then I'll go wide receiver. Although it's kind of funny because you could argue if he's a wide receiver, but my favorite guy in this class is Kyle Monangai from Rutgers. I've stand for him since last year. I think he's the biggest sleeper in this class, in this running back. He's the biggest sleeper. I do not know why he's ranked so low or graded so low by so many people, but he is, to me, he's got a round 3 grade for me. I personally, if I was running a team, I'd be comfortable drafting him right in round 3. I know he's going to be there later on. Just for I just don't know why he's looked at so low, but I see an absolute NFL running back, even with the speed limitations that he absolutely has. He does so many other things at a good level, at a high level, and so he's my favorite prospect in this class. The other guy I like a lot is Damian Martinez. I probably have, he is my RB3, and I probably am higher on him than most, but I have seen some people like him a lot. I think Damian Martinez, you want a physical runner. Oh my God. Like I wanted him, or I would love for him. My dream destination for him right now would be the Chargers, because Harbaugh wants that physical type of, run game and everything like that. Martinez would do so well with the Chargers and that type of mentality. So I would love Martinez there. And then I have a few other guys at running back, but I'll shift it over to wide receiver. This is because he intrigues me a lot about how he's going to be used in the next level, and I'm keeping a close eye on it. Savion Williams, TCU, he is, to me, I see him, and he's as close to Cordarrelle Patterson that we've seen. Like it's maybe he's bigger, maybe a little bit slower, but in terms of ability, as like he's listed as a wide receiver, but he looks like a damn running back when he's running. Like he is so intriguing. And again, like I don't know how he's going to be used, and that's one of the toughest things that I've heard from other people too, is how our team's going to use him and utilize him in the next level. And I'm so interested in see how that's going to work. But that's also why he's one of my favorite prospects, is because he has so many tools, and the upside, and what you were saying, like, the upside of what he could be is so high that I'm just so interested, and I'm so like I'm fascinated by his skill set. So I personally I think he could be a really good running back if he were to commit full time to that. I don't know if he ever will, but the fact that he does have wide receiver skills just adds another dimension to him. And so, like, yeah, he's the the other guy that I'm really keeping an eye on.
Just to give a quick thought on a couple of the guys that you named, start with Savion, man. Jack of all trades, master of none. I one of those guys where I talked about earlier, where you could either be 2 games or 2 hours. He was definitely a 2-hour watch because I was looking for a reason to really watch him. I mean, to really like him. I really want to like because I enjoy like it. Kind of is like you mentioned, Cordell Patterson. It's like a blast to the past. The players like him are why I got into scouting. So I was sitting there like, please, I want you to be great. But at the same time, I mean, the one thing that I learned with myself throughout the process of this is at some point you have to be real with yourself. You could be a football fan all you want, but how do these players translate to the next level is a completely different conversation. Yeah. And I don't want to call it the Jalen Walker conversation because I think he's a little more deep. He's much deeper in than Jalen Walker. I think I can find Jalen Walker a home. It's just trying to figure out what it is, but I can find him a home. Where is his home going to be in terms of Savion Williams? I don't know. But he could do a little bit of everything. He's not very refined at much of them, but he could do a lot of everything. And that's that's the difficult part about it to me. Just
very tough. Very,
like
very.
I said, I'm a tape over traits person, man. So traits intrigue me, but then when I start having these kind of conversations, when I gotta be real, it's like, yeah, man, I don't know.
Yeah, it goes into like that's why like I listen to him as my guy because it's not that I think he's definitely going to be a really great player. It's more of though like I'm just so fascinated about what like how our team's going to use him because like I think with Cordell Patterson it was I do not know why he wasn't used as a running back earlier on in his career where
because
that
he's
was
so big, and that's going to be the problem with Say because he's so big. Like we want to make this 6'5" receiver a thing. Now, if it works or not, I don't know. Are you going to waste years of his development trying to make it work? That's the thing. Like for Cordell and probably for Savion too, you're just one of them players. Like you're the Luther Burden conversation right now. You just get him the ball in his hands and you let him work. However that works, you just do that. Now, utilizing him at running back could be the option, but it's just like I said before, man. That's what makes draft season so fascinating because you have those 2 different type of gamblers. What I like to refer to them as. You got the safe gamblers and you got the people that want to shoot for the $1 million because it's $1 million.
Yeah.
Like in a perfect world, if Savion turns into the highest tool prospect that he could, they make him in labs. That's not regular players, but that's not realistic. It's so much that kind of goes into it, man. So I don't know, man. Somebody's gonna have to take the risk.
Yeah, that's what it is. It's like he's I would be very shocked if he goes on day 2. He's gonna be a day 3 guy most likely. But there is a team that's gonna look at those traits and be like, they're gonna have a plan for him. That's what I'm keeping an eye on. And so he's fascinating. He's very polarizing. One of the most polarizing prospects that I've come across in this draft class so far. So yeah, it's very interesting. I don't know for the other 2 guys that you mentioned for your guys. I don't know if you wanted to dive more into them and give a little bit of.
Actually, I was just gonna say, man, since you kind of went into your bag a little bit with that one or with a couple of them, kind of me. I mean, and of course, if you listen to the My Guy episode, you'll get more of these. But just to give you one of them that I mentioned because I feel like he needs more love. Shout out to Mello Dotson, man. He's a My Guy at the cornerback position. I feel like everybody loves Kobe Bryant because A, his name is Kobe Bryant, and B, he's a damn hooper. He plays the game the right way. If I told people, and I mean, like I like to say all the time, I hate player comps because it puts too
I
much of
hate
an
him too.
expectation on a
Yeah.
player. For me, at least, and I mean, I like to think you understand where I'm coming from. So hopefully, once we get off here, or if you get the opportunity to go and watch them, you'll have the level of expectation of what I'm saying, type of thing. Where I haven't felt this good about a group of corners and how feisty they play the position as a collective unit
Mm-hmm.
since Kyler Gordon and Trent McDuffie out of Washington.
Mm.
Between Kobe
Mm-hmm.
Bryant and Melo Dotson, those are two feisty corners that they match each other's energy at the cornerback position. They play well off each other. They play the game like the game owes them something, for lack of a better term. Melo might, in terms of his NFL translation, 9 interceptions over the last 2 seasons, tied a school record for 2 of those returned for touchdowns. He runs in his family. He had a cousin named Miko Dotson that led the FBS in interceptions in 2019 for Florida Atlantic. So shout out to Miko. But he was primarily an outside corner. I don't think he has any inside utilization. Teams may could try it, but has over 600 snaps on the outside in each of the last 2 seasons. I like to call him I like to call him lucky, but he just has an eye for football, for lack of better terms, in terms of the ball skills with the 9 interceptions. I appreciate his skill set as a zone cover corner. I don't think he'll ever be the kind of guy that you'll trust on an island in terms of man coverage, but I can see him as a valuable, kind of the same role he plays at Kansas, where he's a very valuable cornerback too. I don't want to relate him. This isn't me relating him into, like I said, I hate player comps. This isn't me relating him into skill set, but just what he brought to a team. He's very reminiscent of a Jalen Mills and what Jalen Mills brought to Philadelphia,
Yeah.
high
Okay.
energy,
Yeah.
things of that nature. And he'll never give up on a play. There are going to be plays where you watch and you be like, you just got beat, brother. I'm sorry. It happens like that. But he'll never give up on a play. He's going to play with everything he has in him. So just to give you an idea of what you're watching as a prospect.
Nice. I love that. I appreciate that info. That's awesome. All right. So to top it off, one player, one prospect. What is your dream, your ideal landing spot or destination for that prospect? What prospect do you want to see the most go to a certain team? Oh, you're muted.
Sorry.
No,
That's a
okay.
difficult question where and it's so crazy because this is a question I typically thrive in on a year by year basis. But
Mm-hmm.
with this class is just so intriguing, man. And they grow on me more and more every day. I didn't start off on them the highest, and just every day closer we get to the draft. I love every single position that's not named quarterback, man. I love them all. I love
Awesome.
them all. So it's interesting to see how everything plays out. But if I had to say one prospect and landing spot, it would probably be man.
It's tough.
It's just tough. It's
Took
really
me
tough.
it took me a little while to kind of figure it out too.
It's really tough.
I
I'd
mentioned one
probably
earlier.
say, oh, go
Go ahead.
ahead.
I mentioned one earlier. I said Damian Martinez to the Chargers, and then the other one, another one I would put is Taj Brooks to the Texans. But yeah, those are 2 off the top of my head.
Okay, I got one for myself.
Mm-hmm.
I'm ready to ball.
Let's go.
Actually, I got 2 for you now that I'm
Yeah.
thinking about it.
Get it up.
I'm going to steal one from shout out to AJ Schultz. I believe it was him that gave me this on the Boomer Bus episode. Emeka Buka to the Los Angeles Rams. He's basically Robert Woods. He's basically
Yes.
Cooper Kupp. He's in every receiver that you want, in that he's going to block his ass off at that. He's going to be the one that leaks out when you think he's about to block and just is wide open in the middle of nowhere. He's the kind of guy that you can run your offense through. I love to refer him to as the dirty work man. He's going to catch the third down passes, the passes in the red zone. He's going to be the reason your running back gets springs open. That's why that's my wide receiver too, because they're like I said a second ago, he's going to play a long time for a multitude of reasons. It's hard not to keep him on the field right now. you have to highly regard Emeka Egbuka, if you ask me. Now, the second one would be, I guess I got to stick to my Buckeye reins here at this point, but Travion Henderson to Chicago.
Ah.
They have DeAndre Swift, who has pass catching acumen and things of that nature. I'm interested to see how the relationship between him and Ben Johnson works out, because note to people, Ben Johnson had him once before and he got traded.
He got traded away.
We'll see. I mean, Ben said that he loves him and he's excited to work with him once he got hired. We'll see how that works out. But
it's not like Swift is young though. So I mean, like, you absolutely need to get fresh legs into that backfield. I like that pick a lot, because with Henderson, you have, with Ben Johnson, he really, he worked so well, obviously, with Gibbs and orchestrating, stuff for Gibbs, and you have an ultra explosive guy like Henderson too. That's a really good fit. I would like that fit too. Yeah.
He's how I refer to it as. I don't know if you guys got Walmart, so with Walmart's do that down in your area, but he's the great value version of Gibbs.
I love that. That's awesome. That's a good pick. I love, if that happens, I'm gonna DM you and be like, yo, you got it, you nailed it. I would love that pick. I would love that destination for Henderson. Awesome. And I do like when it comes to when it's draft, especially like day two is when a lot of like the top running backs go. I always like put a blurb out to like before and my thoughts on each destination. And so like it's a big thing for me, because like pre-draft is one thing, but post-draft to see where these guys go is another. And
that's when the party really begins, because landing spot is everything. When you can start pairing skill sets to a home and see, that's when the fantasy football fans start to come out the woodworks. Like, because that guy right there, top pick.
100. Oh my God. Well, it's been a lot of fun. I can't believe it's already been an hour 15, hour 17. I feel like you and I could talk for hours about ball and the nuances in our processes and scouting and projects in this draft. But I'm sure we'll be able to have more opportunities. Definitely want to have you back on once again in a show, especially with when my co-host is back on, and I think we'll have great conversations. But I want to say thank you, huge thank you for coming on. I appreciate it, and I enjoyed this so much. So thank you.
Definitely, man. I enjoyed this conversation thoroughly. Sorry if I had a couple times that I rambled a little bit. Clearly, you can see that I really love ball. Like these are what the moments that I live for. If you
well, you don't have to apologize to me, because I'm often the one that rambles on my shows. Like people have to shut me up because I talk too much, and I go on tangents because one thing leads to another, and I'm just talking ball. So it's perfectly fine. Me and you are so alike in that regard. So you'll never have to apologize to me about rambling about football. So you're good, man. And you are welcome back any other time. I'll reach out to you and one more time, let everyone know where they can find you.
Definitely, man. I definitely have to reciprocate the energy to you on my end and get you on my side. Ask you a couple questions, see how you feel about the game. But I mean, like you see here, man, the Philly Blitz. You can find us if you're looking for podcasts. You can find us on all your different streaming platforms: YouTube, Apple, Spotify, everywhere you're looking for us from. You could also find those Boomer Bust episodes, same place you locate all of our Philly Blitz episodes. I promise you, it's something that you will want to listen to. Shout out to all the people that I've had the chance to have on, man, from JP Acosta all the way down to Arif Hassan, man. It's been a blast. But, I mean, the Philly Blitz, I've said the same name 17 times. I'll continue to say it. That's where all of our content is found. And you can search the phillyblitz.com. You'll see my big board there when it's released in the next week. You'll see my mock drafts, so both variations of my mock drafts that I've released over the last month or so. I'd love to get another one out to you guys, but the big board is calling to me, man. We got to get it finalized. I'm sorry.
Yeah, finalizing those big boards is always it's always like cutthroat. So it comes down to the wire. So I hear you. Yeah, it's if you're not following him yet or not following the Philly Blitz, definitely give them. They do great work. Quell, keep grinding the tape, and keep doing great work. And I will definitely be talking to you soon. For those of you who are listening and watch the whole show, thank you. Appreciate you, fam. It's good to be back on A2D Radio after a short hiatus, and you can expect to see me again on Film Don't Lie every week. I'll also be back on Eagles Talk every Monday night, so I will be back in the swing of things, ready to talk more football. To our sponsor, Alonzi Travel, make sure you hit me up if you're looking for a vacation to Disney, Universal, or wherever your heart calls you. For myself, for Quell, for all of us over at the station at A2D Radio, we thank you. God bless, and we will see you next week. Peace out, guys.